All right, everyone. So I just finished watching the Napoleon movie, and I thought I'd do a little bit of a review about the movie, kind of separate fact versus fiction in it. I will say before you watch this, I do have like a 10-minute overview of Napoleon video that I made before the video movie, and that's probably something good to watch before you watch the movie because I know people who have told me they've watched the movie without knowing any history were like so confused. It just went from just one battle and another battle, and none of it really didn't make as much sense. So I think if you watch that first, you might enjoy the movie a little bit more. So kind of let's get through what was it. You might have seen the movie. Like, did that happen? Did that not happen? And I want to go through a few things there. So, in the beginning of the movie, it starts with him, seeing the execution of Marie Antoinette, the wife of Louis the 16th and all that during the Reign of Terror. And yeah, the Reign of Terror was going on, but he never was there when the execution took place. So he was never part of that, never saw that happen in person. The other thing is, Joaquin Phoenix is maybe too old to play Napoleon because at that scene, Napoleon's in his 20s, right? He's still in his 20s, and you look at Joaquin Phoenix there at that particular part of the movie, and he's like 50 years old or something. So, and the fact that he was younger does matter because that kind of influenced Napoleon. One thing that was really lacking in the movie, I will say, is how they didn't get into Napoleon, the child of the Enlightenment. All right, that he was somebody who was influenced by Rousseau and Locke and Montesquieu. They never mentioned the civil code and how that influenced people and how he used that as he went into other places to convince people to support him and kind of the complexities of him. So that was one thing kind of in the beginning of the movie that I noticed was just kind of a bit off. Another thing in the movie, of course, they show how there was a coup and he came into power. That did happen. There was this whole coup that takes place, and how he became first consul, and then very quickly rose through that. And then, of course, how he becomes emperor. So one scene in it is, of course, when he becomes emperor, he takes the crown from the Pope and he puts it on his own head, and people wonder, did that happen? That actually did happen. He did actually crown himself, and that was very intentional. This is something I actually demonstrate in my class when I do this lecture with my students, and I explain to him how he wanted the power himself as he was crowning himself emperor. And this goes all the way back to the time of Charlemagne when he took the title Holy Roman Emperor, and it was the Pope that crowned Charlemagne. And Napoleon was like, no, 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 I want to crown myself. So that was something. Probably one of the biggest things in the movie that got a lot of attention was this Battle of Austerlitz, which was a very famous battle during the course of the War of Napoleon. And there's, very dramatic scenes and the ice, and he fires the cannons, and the ice breaks, and everybody sinks and drowns in the ice. That, folks, never happened. The Battle of Austerlitz was one of his great successes, and this is what I will say. I don't understand why you have to embellish anything with the story of Napoleon. The story of Napoleon's life is dramatic without having to embellish anything. The way he outmaneuvered the forces at the Battle of Austerlitz, that was all good things you could talk about, but there was never this big lake that he fired cannons in and all these soldiers drowned. There's no real evidence of that. There's some suggestions that I've read that there were a few areas with a little bit and maybe a few people drowned in some ice, but not there. It was just this big heavy fog. He managed to maneuver like 70,000 troops. He brought to his reinforcements in 2 days to that battle site. So that could have been done a lot better, I think. One thing they didn't have, of course, is the whole battle with Britain, the Navy, and how the British Navy defeated his Navy. So that was something they probably could have included that they didn't, at the Battle of Trafalgar. Then, as the movie goes on, eventually you get into kind of how he rises and he goes through Russia. The whole Russia campaign, they did depict that, 600,000 men, the Grand Army, and that is correct what you saw in the movie, how the winter hit and his forces were devastated. In fact, one really good book I would recommend that I use in my class, I don't know if you can see it here, but I'll put it in the description, a man named Jacob Walter, and it's the Diary of a Napoleonic Foot Soldier. And it's a great primary source that talked about what happened during that Russian campaign, the Great Retreat, and how they had to, eat, tallow from frozen dead cows, and how horrible it was. And this was really his fall, essentially, right? When he loses that Russian campaign, at that point, it was just a matter of time. The next kind of scenes in the movie, when he was sent to exile first to Elba, and he was ruling over Elba, and then he leaves, and then there is this scene there that is actually accurate when, Louis the 18th, who was then the monarch, and again, this is where people watching the movie who don't know any history would be like, what's going on here? Who's this, this guy, Louis the 18th? Where did he come from? So, this is something I have a whole set of lectures on the French Revolution. I have my little 10-minute video on Napoleon, but I have like much longer ones. And it makes a lot more sense in that content because there's a scene in the movie where Louis the 18th sends his forces to intercept Napoleon, and Napoleon convinces them to join them. That did happen, and Napoleon convinced the men. They go in, and they in fact he does retake France. And then you get that big Battle of Waterloo. I think they did a better job at the Battle of Waterloo than they did at the Battle of Austerlitz, right? The Battle of Austerlitz, I think they just didn't depict that well in terms of what happened. But the Battle of Waterloo with Wellington and the squares that Wellington was forming, and Napoleon almost got through those squares. He didn't quite do it. There's some people who said if he attacked a little bit earlier, he may have been able to, but then there was the rain and all that. And then the scene after that where he meets Wellington, that part never happened. He never met Duke Wellington. He never had that scene with him. That was just something, I don't know why they just threw in there. And then, yes, he did end up his life on this little island called St. Helena, which is this little former volcanic island where he lived to kind of live the last 6 of his life and died of cancer. So the movie itself definitely hits all the kind of big points, but it really did, I think, kind of one of the things that I didn't like as much is it almost depicted Napoleon as this kind of childlike, bratty guy. And, he was eccentric, but he wasn't this kind of blobbering fool that they have at several times of the movie. He wasn't this little short guy either. That's another myth. He wasn't this 5'2" guy or anything. He was probably about 5'7". But in the movie they kind of depict him as like a little boy, just crying, almost, I don't know, buffoon's the right word or what. But he wasn't that. And I think they could have done a much better job with, as I said earlier, this whole child and enlightenment and all of that. In the beginning of the movie, the whole Battle of Pyramids, he never shot at the pyramids. That's a thing that they think they even had in the trailer, was like, no, he never shot at the pyramids. So there was, it was a good movie, but I don't think you could watch it and think, oh, I'm learning a lot about Napoleon, not the person. And there's definitely a lot of those things that just didn't quite happen right. Another really good book that I'll suggest, that I'll put this in the description as well. It's a big old book, as you can see here, but Napoleon by A Life by Andrew Roberts. This is a really good book as well. So that's kind of one biography on him, and then The Diary of a Napoleonic Foot Soldier are a couple that I really do like. So anyways, it's just my thoughts on the movie, just seeing it from the perspective of knowing all the history, and hopefully that kind of answered some of the things that happened and didn't happen, what was right and what was wrong. I do have, I did another one of these on Oppenheimer, and if you've never saw Oppenheimer, I have to say I loved Oppenheimer a lot more than this movie, and I do have a review on that one as well here you can watch also. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the Napoleon movie. If you've watched it, leave some comments, what you thought about the movie itself, and maybe you have questions of something that I didn't include in here and you were wondering, did it happen or not? Leave it in the comments and I'll try to answer that. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. All right, please share with others. Have a great day. Bye.